From the center of the galaxy, this is ForceCenter, show about Star Wars, pop culture, and the ultimate adventure, life itself. I'm Ken Napzok.
I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
And, of course, we're here for Star Wars questions. We got a question from our audience, and we've got a great story behind the question, and we're going to dive into that and answer it as best we can. Before we get to that, we always like to remind you that today's podcast is brought to you by our merch shop on Fourth Wall. That's right, we sponsor ourselves. Head on over to ForceCenter.shop.fourthwall.com. Head over there and get a t-shirt, a coaster, a pint glass, a tote bag, a hat, anything that you want. If it's not there, just let us know, and we'll try to add it to the shop. Get there and help support Force Center out in the wild. Again, go to ForceCenter.shop.fourthwall.com. We are sponsoring ourselves, and that means we might actually get more money than if we would have an actual ad read.
It is quite possible. Sign up for better shirt.
Better shirt.
Anyway, yes, Fourth Wall. I have an endless list of like little things that don't take that much time that I want to do. And one of them is get one of our own bleeping pint glasses to drink live, not drink live, you know what I mean, to sip from, or a mug. I mean, I like my Dale Cooper mug, but come on.
Yep.
Dale Cooper's not sponsoring the show. Yep. Our own Fourth Wall shop is sponsoring the show. So anyway, I'll get on that.
I'll put it on the ledger too. I'll remember. Okay. We'll do it. It's easy. It's easy.
We'll do it. I believe in us. We're also promoting our Patreon goal, right? So thank you to everyone who helped us grow on Patreon. We're hoping to continue to grow right now in these difficult times. We have a new goal of reaching 417 paid patrons by the time Disney Lucasfilm announces the release of The Mandalorian and Grogu on physical media. We are at 411 last time I checked, which was last night. So hopefully we're still there. So thank you to everyone who has helped. And we're so close to this goal of 417.
Yeah, we really appreciate that there. And since we're not sure when the announcement's happening, this could be the shortest or longest goal ever. Ever.
Yeah, I mean, if they never announce it, I mean, we will change the goal. But
We'll change it indeed. We've got some questions here. You want to get into the question? You want to? Do you want to do life adventures here? Do I need to know what's going on in your life, Joseph? You do it on the news sometimes.
You do it on the news.
It's our chance to catch up as friends too. So
exactly. My Mando and Grogu action figure finally arrived, which is bittersweet. The vintage collection, Mando and Grogu 2-pack. So close to arriving, while Mando and Grogu was the hot thing that that we were talking about. It feels like it's reaching the end of its summer excitement, you know?
Yeah.
So it is so close action figure companies to having them right in the correct moment of the zeitgeist. So that was my Star Wars adventure, is Mando and Grogu arriving, and you know, I have other action figures of them, but this is the one that says The Mandalorian and Grogu on the card. So come on.
It means everything. It means everything.
It means everything. Yeah. And as I will keep promoting in all of our life adventures, a big life adventure for me was got the tickets live for the Los Angeles premiere of our horror film Dead Media. That is going to be on Saturday, July 18th. So please, if you are in Los Angeles and want to check it out, get tickets now. It's going to have not just a screening. There's going to be an intro that I'm going to do. There's going to be some fun merch surprises. We're going to have a Q&A moderated by Joe Lynch, a writer-director himself, with stars of the film, including James Urbaniak and Sammy Jack Martinsack and Jessica Fenton, all sorts of cool people. All sorts of information about that is at antennareleasing.com/film/dead media. Ken, tell me about your life adventures.
Well, I don't have a film premiering in LA, so I'm happy for you there. I will be there as well. A link is down below in the description too if you're watching on YouTube and you're local, or maybe you want to travel. Just come on out. It might go to a city near you, but this is your chance to see it in the heart of Hollywood. For me, the only I had a brief little Star Wars thing. My Father's Day in our rearview mirror, and I was doing the phone call to Dad. That's about all I can get, Dad, these days. But a good phone call. And we were just talking, and he asked me in the most innocent way, "Hey, have you seen that Mandalorian and Grogu movie?" I said, "Yes, I have. So I saw it a couple times." And he said, "Yeah, I saw it twice too."
Wow.
Is it really? Goes, yeah, I like that. I love the special. My dad's always been, he's an engineer, and it used to be a 2D kind of animator
Okay.
guy, and so he's like, I love special effects; they're so good. He's like, my favorite thing was those huts rolling around fighting, and I love that. So a friend of his wanted to see the film, so he's like, we went back and saw it, and we're already at the point where you're hearing some conversation that this was a bust, and same with Masters of the Universe and the death of the blockbuster, and all that might be true from a certain point of view. That's about the business. That's about what's going on. I know these horror films out there, Backrooms and Obsession are getting a lot of press, as they should. So a lot of those conversations aren't just things I brush off of where we are. But as we reach the Mandalorian and Grogu didn't work phase of the summer discourse, I'm just encouraged by things like that. My dad has no skin in the game, and he loved the film. And thought it was great, and went back to see it twice, and had favorite scenes and moments, and that to me is all I really need right now as a Force Center podcaster and Star Wars fan.
I feel much better about when my Mando and Grogu figures arrive now. It's still the movie of the summer for dads.
For dads everywhere, yes.
That's great. That is great to hear. And I think, it is much needed perspective. It's still in theaters. I think the box office from this weekend is it still made something like $4.7 million in its this past weekend. It's still there. It's still kicking. It's not a bomb by any means. It's going to make its money back if it hasn't already, even with all the marketing and everything. And if I keep buying more Mando and Grogu figures, it will absolutely make its merch money back because I'm not alone.
Yeah, indeed. So it's encouraging. And like I said, there's a valuable discussion to be had about the state of the movie industry and the big blockbusters. And I haven't seen Masters of the Universe, but it was well received by the people I saw it. But is it too based on a toy line from the 80s that now you could say, oh, that's my grandpa's favorite toys, like we are to that point. So Star Wars, I don't think is in the same bucket, and I think that movie will stand the test of time in its own way. Other than that, I performed again on a pop culture themed comedy night, which also I'm included on another one at San Diego Comic-Con. That's what I have to promote. Thursday night, July 23rd, Yellow House, me, Jen Sturger, Mark Ellis, and others. Sturger and Ellis kind of headlining the show. And it's marketed as a pop culture themed comedy show in the most, I guess this is what nerds like, way. But I was on another one at Flappers in Burbank, which is mostly a Star Trek themed show. You and I and Jackie Cation and Mike Black did the one in May, which was we made it Star Wars. This one's back to Star Trek, which is what it's mostly. And I did the old like who's an actual Star Trek fan here crowd work kind of thing. 2 people applauded. 2 people and some people were like, I don't know, we just came in for a comedy show. So I don't know. I think it's time to. But I did talk about how in my day, being a nerd was a target on your back for a lot of things in a lot of ways. But that I think it's great we can have these shows out in the open now, that we could just be like, hey, we're doing nerd stuff, and it's you and I have talked about that before. Like even at my time in the Groundlings in the early 2000s, writing a nerd sketch was met with not just ridicule, but the director going, "Oh no, we shouldn't do that. No, don't do that. No one's going to connect with that." So I like where we are, but it was also kind of funny to be up on stage with a bunch of pop culture jokes ready to go, and everyone's like, "Yeah, no, we're just here for the pickles and the comedy." So I don't know.
It is funny. I mean, I think it's totally natural. And I think it's such an important part of this whole conversation about individual films is it was a massive change. It was a massive swing, started in the late 2000s. I would say maybe, Iron Man and Big Bang Theory. I'm not personally, I got some beef with Big Bang, which we'll talk about some other time. But I understand other people love it. Great. But just like that, like, wait, actually, there's a lot of energy and fun and money and excitement behind this whole nerd thing. And it was so big. And now I feel like maybe it's just sort of calming down of like, of course, it's a swing,
Swing. Yeah. It's become normal in a way. And that's a good thing to me where for a while it was a little punk to be a nerd on some of this stuff. Like I like Star Wars too. And then now it's, I'm glad that not just Star Wars, but it's normalized. I think you're right. The explosion of San Diego Comic-Con, the Marvel movies exploded, and that making it just general audience going, oh, this superhero thing's okay. I give that a lot of credit. So yeah, interesting side conversation, but I get to tell jokes in front of disinterested people over pop culture.
That's great. Yeah. I just need to emotionally process one thing you said, which was that He-Man is for grandpas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, you look,
Yeah.
I grew up with He-Man, and the math checks out. I could have had a child at 25, and that child could have a child at 25, and that's not even
Yep.
outrageous, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we are
Mm-hmm.
definitely heading into the territory where logically,
Mm-hmm.
mathematically, He-Man is going to be for grandpas. But
Yep.
the cultural baggage we accumulate is so funny because, like, no, grandpas fought Nazis in World War II.
Yeah.
They didn't collect Ram Man.
Yeah. 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 They were a nom. They were that. Yeah. They opened up shops to build cars. Yeah. No. It definitely. I took that take from an article I was reading this weekend of just like, the movie is well received, but it didn't necessarily do good, and that could be one of the reasons why. Because over like Marvel and DC and all that stuff, like He-Man is not niche because there's still comic lines and animated shows. Our pal friend of the show, Tiffany Smith, is voicing the character, writes some of the
Yeah.
comics for him. It's still going, but it's not big enough to be like some 13-year-old is going to be like, oh, I want to check out that He-Man movie. Like, there's just it's a different vibe to try to bring it back. But anyways, I don't know, different conversation. But I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to try to see it one of these days.
I'm tortured that I can't see it because the people who have been seeing it, I have some fellow friends who are very all in on Masters of the Universe, and I just haven't had time. But I'll make time for He-Man.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Should we get into some questions, or not some questions? Should we get into a question?
Question. Yeah, let's do it.
Yes, because we've been getting nice, juicy questions, substantive questions that can carry us through just fine. This one comes to us from Zach, and before I start in, Zach makes a good humorous joke about this. We do encourage people to write essays and tell us really where they're coming from and their own opinion on the question. So this is a little bit longer, but it's because we asked for it this way. So this is from Zach. Zach says, greeting, ForceCenter friends. I heard someone ordered an essay. Well, here it is. My question begins with recent events in the Star Trek franchise. You can't get away from it, Ken.
I can't get away.
There's going to be some Star Trek in your Star Wars. Zach continues. Last week, it was announced that the Star Trek series Starfleet Academy would be canceled after its second season. I should also say this came in a while ago, which is why Zach is saying last week. Last week, it was announced that the Star Trek series Starfleet Academy would be canceled after its second season. There has been much debate, obviously, about why this is happening. The other part of the discussion has been about what it means for the future of Trek. With no new shows, there was a bleeping pop-up in front of my script. With no new shows or movies waiting to take its place, and with much uncertainty around the direction of Paramount, there seems to be some doubts about new Star Trek. This inspires my question about Star Wars because it has led me to wonder if there might be a storytelling void Star Wars could fill. I also recently heard a conversation on a podcast that asked what films or TV shows that depict the future of humanity actually depict a hopeful future, because it seemed like most were somewhat dystopian. Of course, the answer was Star Trek. But now that Star Trek seems to be in decline, where are those stories coming from? Do you think it could be Star Wars? It seems to me that as Star Wars storytelling moves into the post-Skywalker saga timeline, they're entering canonically uncharted territory. In universe, it's a time period in which they can explore how, in practice, a better world is built after a period of war and fascism and societal unrest. Sounds somewhat relevant, says Zach. When I'm not writing long internet comments, my day job is as a pastor in a Christian denomination. Now I have to offer the obligatory, no, not that kind. I spend a big part of my week digging into ancient stories and myths that are still speaking to people today. My job is to help them speak in a way that offers hope for everyone. That's why I've always enjoyed ForceCenter's approach to Star Wars. You take the themes and ideas from these stories we all love and make them speak to hopeful lessons and messages that can apply to today. It's how I approach the part of my work that involves stories, so I have a bit of a professional interest in how Star Wars might do this. So how do you guys think Star Wars storytelling going forward can use the myths and traditions and tropes it's built on to give us stories that imagine a better future, a Star Wars future? Thank you, Zach, for this question from a month or so back, but we're happy to be able to dig into it now. So, Ken, I'm sorry, I'm going to torture you with some more Star Trek.
Do it.
What do you think about the difference between Star Wars and Star Trek's view of space politics and society? Star Trek is explicitly set as an evolution of our real world with real world events, and it is taking place in the far-flung and better in many ways future, where Star Wars is happening a long time ago in a fantasy world that is not tethered to any real timeline of our universe, but they're both about politics and society and how we make choices as a culture and what kind of governments we have. So what do you think is the difference between the two for yourself?
Just might be that one-to-one kind of connection and comparison, right? I mean, hell, I could see Star Trek 4 and the USS Enterprise. The Earth version was in the movie, and I had been on it as a kid, and I felt I was in Star Trek. I thought that
Wow.
was so cool. I did a tour of the USS Enterprise, so I think that kind of is just. I don't want to say it's easier. That sounds wrong. Like Star Wars is so complicated because it's set in another galaxy. You have to work to make the connections. That's not what I mean, but you can see yourself in Star Trek, right? And I think that's probably along the sci-fi fantasy divide, right? That's kind of where it would go. And we've always kind of said Star Wars is fantasy first. So that's kind of where I go to that, Star Trek's like, hey, you could save the whales and we're going to show you how.
Yes, very. Yeah, I think Star Wars has always really tried to be sort of timeless ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And Star Trek is like, no, literally, Earth was super racist in these time periods. And then,
Yes.
and with
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the story of Star Trek, having some sad moments where events that lead us into a better trajectory were supposed to have happened according
Right.
to the Star Trek timeline, as they sort of jumped like, well, we're writing in the 90s. Well, what if by this year this thing happened and made that passed? Oh well, keep
Mm-hmm.
trying. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that it is a difference between to say Star Trek is telling a story about our society in a linear timeline, whereas I think Star Wars is wrestling with uh, timeless ideas, and I think like the Andor version of politics of like,
Mm-hmm.
these are timeless ideas. Fascism and fighting against fascism are timeless, and the tactics are sadly timeless. And Star Wars making an effort to be not one for one with the real world.
Yeah.
Ended up, as all the writers said, like we weren't trying to be one to one with the real world. We were just writing the tactics of fascism, and a bunch of people are trying to do fascism, and they're doing the exact things we wrote about in the show because hey,
Yeah.
that's the playbook. But
Mm-hmm.
that does, I think, with that spotlight on Star Wars as a mechanism for discussing and wrestling with politics and the kind of society we want to have. I do think it kind of puts a little bit more of a spotlight on the sequel trilogy or the post sequel trilogy era that Zach is referencing.
Yeah, yeah, he nailed it on some of the opportunity they have to take what's going on in the Star Wars galaxy at this time and just say, hey, let's how do you build following all these things? I think it's a absolutely wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, I think so too. I wanted to ask you about this specific difference between Star Wars and Star Trek as well. Uh, Star Wars is often depicted hope in a dark time of how do you hold on to hope when things are not good. We're getting a little bit in the post original trilogy era, the sort of Mandoverse era of, hey, let's not slip back into the
Hmm.
dark times. But that's also, I think, sort of being colored by, and we know fascism is going to rise again with the First Order. So we know that they succeeded for a time,
Hmm. Hmm.
but not all that long. How do you feel about the idea of a Star Wars that is still expressing ideas of hope and characters are still in conflict, uh, but it's not set in an overall dark time we are under the boot of fascism?
As if as with the sun is already out, but we're still trying to find hope. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I actually kind of think I would like that. Um, Star Wars is just basing so much of itself on history, in terms of just not just the myths, but the stuff that you talked about with Tony Gilroy and his team. And I think a lot of that stuff is present in the storytelling when you look there. And it, Star Wars: A New Hope emerges out of a dark time, and it's still grimy and gritty and sand covered when the hope emerges there. So I think a chance to do it where um, you always want to have conflict, but we are in a time of peace, and how best to build from that peace will elicit a lot of opinions, will elicit a lot of politicians and their takes, and we talked about the new Jedi Order. Maybe the villains aren't necessarily red-bladed Sith. I think they would be at some point, maybe, but or red blades at least. But also the people who are like, hey, we're suspicious of you. But all that under the banner of we're actively trying to build forward and talking about it. I think that'd be slightly different than what a lot of people feel like 7, 8, and 9 were, especially 7. We've had the longer conversations. We think there's a lot of new ideas and a lot of new things in the Force Awakens, but also can't deny. Yeah, it was kind of hey, let's kind of work with some of the big themes we've worked with in the past for a new generation. But so I don't know if that makes sense, but I think we have a chance. We don't necessarily have to be under that. It would feel fresh. Just that alone would feel like a fresher start.
Yeah, and I think the Phantom Menace is kind of an interesting example too, because the galaxy's okay, but we're being shown the rot, and it's also I think the future isn't wide open. We know this is a story of the galaxy going to hell, so we do have a few good moments in the Star Wars timeline where like we're not technically under the boot of fascism, but a part of the story is we know it's coming. So to have that open period where like we don't know what happens next, we don't know if this experiment survives or not is really interesting to me. Yeah, I also think there's something interesting really in the wake of the sequel trilogy. And like you said, you're very big fans of the sequel trilogy. I love everything they did. I don't think that it's this pointless story of like, well, they defeated the Empire and then they just let it rise again. So what matters? Like there's 35 years of not fascism. And I would always vote for if people made a lot of sacrifices and fascism went away for 2 years, great. I'll take as many as I can get. I think it's still, but I do think there's this interesting tension in all storytelling, but in this difference between science fiction and fantasy. We both have friends who are like, I want a fantasy. I wanted it to be a happy storybook ending at the end of Return of the Jedi. They beat the evil empire and they live happily ever after, period. So this kind of push-pull of we kind of want our characters to succeed. We want them to win, but we want to keep spending time with them, which means we want bad things to happen to or around them. We want to drag them back into conflict, And I think there's this tension in the sequel trilogy in particular with Luke and Han and Leia. I think some of the people who struggled with the sequel trilogy or just plain don't like it is a little bit of that, like, I wanted to see my heroes again and I wanted them to have conflict and cool adventures, but I didn't want them to have failed in any way. And I just think there's this very interesting tension in a fantasy world between happily ever after versus, no, it's real life and you have challenges and some things you set right fall apart again. And the sequel trilogy was such a big, like, Star Wars is still fantasy, but actually the way we tell stories is going to be much more, life is hard. Sometimes you have a kid, they ain't right. Things don't go right. They ain't right. Things don't go right. But yeah, how do you feel about that tension between, fantasy storytelling with the possibility of a happily ever after versus a little bit more of this sort of real world, like in real life, you have a win and it's great. And then 5 years later, you have a real bad loss and that's life.
Yeah, I think this is why the spinoff Aftermath failed, right? It's hard to take these characters forward. And I get it. What you're talking about, the sequel era of as tension filled that discourse has been for 10 plus years now. I get, you pick it all back up and Han and Leia are separated. Luke's run off. Like I can get if you felt like, well, what happened to them? But and I think maybe it's a reminder of what could happen in your life or what has happened in your life or to those around you. It is maybe too real. I still think it's one of the best decisions they did. How just basically, wrestling with who they were, that hanging over them. I just think it's kind of interesting, but the tension is real because I'm trying to think of examples of things that I would want to see of after a big ending where whether you're happy with it or not and the characters continue, undercut it a little. Well, Kit Harington had that Jon Snow show he was developing and some of the details came out of it. And he literally pitched like, I in my head when I heard first it was announced, I was like, oh, this could be good. Like this could be you could pull them out of the north. Maybe they need to go look for Drogon the dragon. They can't find Dany's body. It's a year or so after. Like you're pulled back in, and it turns out he was just like, yeah, no, John's depressed. And he sits up in the snow and he hates everything. It's kind of and Game of Thrones doesn't end on the happiest note, whether you like season 8. Yeah. Where you like season 8 or not. Not everyone's no Ewok celebrations, right? Going around.
Nope.
But I remember hearing that, and like that was the first time I was like, yeah, I don't know if I would want to watch that. Like I wanted my interpretation was John getting a breath of fresh air going north, and being like, okay, I'm leaving all that behind. I can be who maybe I really want to be. But and if you're saying it's just dark and somber, and you got to take a sword from him because you don't know what he's going to do to himself, like I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe that wouldn't work. That wouldn't have worked.
And Lord of the Rings also, I think, is a bittersweet ending.
Yeah,
but it's still a little bit of like, and so it was. Yeah. Anyway, one other thing I want to touch on before we move forward is this synergy of telling stories of fascism and what's going on in the real world. Zach hints at it in his question, but I think part of the reason Star Wars or Star Trek rather, is mothballed right now is because the owners of the company are far right, and they don't want hopeful progressive shows that challenge their playbook, which I think is another reason that it is important to get more Star Wars and to hopefully have Star Wars be political as it has always been, but be not subtle about it.
Yeah. And that's maybe even some of what I'm meaning when I'm like, hey, if you were to do a 10, 11, and 12, whatever you want to do going forward, doesn't matter. But that there's people actively saying, we are going to build this right, and I think we get some of that in the quote unquote Mandoverse, the New Republic era. But it's not as clear yet. It's still kind of this forming era. A lot of things, video games from 10 years ago, meeting new shows and comics and ideas, and Jon Favreau's ideas. So yeah, you have a chance to really, really lean into that. Going forward.
Yes, let's talk a little bit about what that might look like with the new Jedi Order and the new Republic. And if they could set up a different status quo, the original trilogy is an attempt to restore the old Republic and to bring the Jedi back from the brink of destruction. And so, as many people talk about, it is coded as a little bit of conservative. It's like, let's go back to the good old days. And yes, they were better than the fascism, but then things within that system break and fall apart. So it is interesting to think, would this next generation say, maybe some of those systems don't work and we need to, instead of just try to return to a gloried past that didn't function, what could function, and in that build a little bit more of a positive society like we see in Star Trek. How would that work for you? Would you like that? What do you think it would look like?
I think it would be very realistic. You'd have a new mayor of Coruscant who is kind of a democratic socialist and wants to bring diapers, daycare, and pothole repairs to Coruscant, and it would start to work. And
those
it would scare
sky
people.
potholes. Yeah.
The sky potholes would work. But what you talked about is it would be realistic to me in the most wonderful ways if you're starting forward and there's new leaders, new era of leaders, whether it's characters we're familiar with, Senator Poe could be, former war hero turned politician. It's real. So you could have something like that. But if you have like, hey, it isn't just the victory. It isn't just the new Republic, or could we call it the double new R, the double new Republic? It wouldn't just be that. Like, what got us back to this? What was in the system that we just simply tried to restore or press the reset button on, but stayed within the same programming? What got us back to the fact that something like the First Order could rise again, or that the galaxy, if you want, we don't spend a lot of time in any economic struggles of the galaxy during the sequel era as much as maybe other eras, but got to imagine that might have been there as the First Order has taken resources and taken planets, and we get some of that stuff. So having a new generation going, how can we rebuild differently? What was inherently bad? And that's a conversation you're seeing around our country that you are seeing it. We're broadcasting, of course, out of America. Not everyone listens to us from this country, from United States of America. So, look what's happening in the UK today as we're recording. Prime Minister resigning. So having the newer, not even necessarily just younger, but the newer voices coming in and going, we need to rebuild everything as best we can for the people, by the people, for the workers, for the lower class. All those conversations you're having now, and then what are the safeguards that we can put in place to keep Palpatine from coming back again, or any of his acolytes? Those people painting the Coruscant pond blue, like we're gonna stop them. And I think that and I don't need it 1-to-1. But if those big sweeping themes that will connect with folks, I think you have a chance to maybe approach it that way.
Yeah, I think so. I think that would be fantastic. And Starfighter might, paint a little picture. I do not think Starfighter is going to lean into these ideas. I think it wants to be super fresh and super accessible, and I don't think it wants to get into the political realities. If they do indeed do a new trilogy set after the events of Rise of Skywalker, whether it's a Skywalker saga or a different saga, I do want them to dig in. And I think when the sequel trilogy came out, it still had a little bit of that. Force Awakens in particular, it still had a little bit of that fear of, one of the things people didn't like about the prequels was the boring politics. And I think after the extreme critical success of Andor, one would hope that they're not as afraid of dealing with the themes that have always been in Star Wars about, hope versus fear, and empathy and connection versus isolation and all that stuff. That's, to me, like, I know the mechanics of it can be boring or annoying or frustrating and all these things, but like, to me, politics are us deciding as a community, what do we value? And now how can we make that laws and rules? And so we as a society say, no one should go hungry. And now we're going to make laws that support that. And we're going to spend money and time that support that value. And so I think there's lots of ways to make it. I don't think you need just a, like, Poe is in the Senate and he has a long fight, and gives a speech. Like, I mean, the Clone Wars animated series did a lot of this, where it's like, okay, there's a lot of fun, pew, pew, pew. But if you listen to, like, why is Padme doing all that stuff? Because they're raising money for more clone soldiers and letting people starve in order to do it. Like, pretty political. So I would love it if they sort of bake that stuff in. In big picture, I think if they sort of jump forward in time, we've got great examples in the High Republic era novels and comics of a great republic that is leading with, we are all the republic. It is leading with empathy and connection and providing for one another and treaties and discussions to make sure that people are being treated fairly, all those things, and working through problems, which is basically just kind of what the Federation is in Star Trek, of like, it takes work, but we have these agreed upon values. And Star Trek gets a lot of its conflict from, there are other forces that are attacking that. And I think, I know we have been on and on and on about the, like, 37 words that Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, or however many it was that she said at that presentation at the London Star Wars Celebration. But discussing the new Jedi Order film, they talked about, hey, well, Rey's leading this group of new Jedi. They are going around and protecting people and helping people. And there's some people who really don't want the new Jedi to rise. And I admit, I'm totally just interpreting that. It's not explicitly in what she said or a press release. It's just the way I'm interpreting it. But to me, that sounds like a great story of a government, a society that is doing better. And the people who are going to benefit from a society not doing well, greedy people, authoritarian leading people, the space billionaires who want to accumulate everything, like that society doesn't work for them. They want everybody in society to need to be signed up to space Facebook
Mm-hmm.
in order for their life to function, and want to charge them whatever they want a month. And if Jedi are stopping those kinds of power grabs, I think you could absolutely have a great Star Wars story where you kind of flip it. Instead of having it's a dark time and there's a spark of hope, of like, it's a hopeful time and there's a spark of darkness trying to take it away. I think that would be really refreshing, and I think have a lot to say about modern challenges without being explicit or one-to-one.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the High Republic. We're fans of the series, even though we both admit we lost track of time and the energy to finish the entire series. I want to get to the other phases, but just I don't need to look at phase 2 or phase 3 or beyond. Just phase 1 of what the High Republic was doing was exactly what you're talking about. It was that big chance to build this right. Lena So's great works and all the stuff. It was a little bit of a Great Society kind of parallel there. That how do we do this? And that's why I love the Nile. I love the idea of these disenfranchised individuals that might have had some understandable reasons to get to where they were, but someone comes in and scoops them up and stokes the passions to make them into more of a threat for the galaxy. And that was kind of interesting. That was an interesting starting point for that series. So we have the High Republic, but could you take that kind of engine, because we want it to be obviously different, introduce new characters and have the younger leads? You're going to have those younger characters. You're going to have the new generation kind of thing in there. That's, I think, just built in and smart as you take Star Wars forward, the Kinberg trilogy otherwise. But so you and I definitely want action. We want pew pew pew. We want whip zing boom, and all those things. Just throw all the pows and the kabooms out there. But it's just that little tweak. It doesn't have to be some chosen one finds the blade and goes on their adventure. The hero's journey can be the entire galaxy's journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. One other thing I wanted to ask you about is Star Wars has told many stories, and I think sometimes in books and comics there is room for even more nuance. So Star Wars isn't always a tale of light and dark. But how would you feel if the political reality is more factions of the government is not as centralized, and maybe there's some kind of core worlds that are like, we have formed a new a new High Republic, and we're really taking care of everything. Everybody's good, but there's this section over here that doesn't want to join, or they're kind of doing their own thing, and it's good too, but we are not aligned on a couple issues. And maybe there's a third over here that's like, well, actually, we believe in a more aggressive approach, and we've raised up like. What I'm getting at a little bit is Star Trek sometimes has portrayed different sections as like the Federation are the good guys, and in the original series the Klingons are kind of the Soviet conflict at the time, and they're the bad guys. Right. But then as you expand, you get like, oh, and now the Romulans are kind of like this, and then the Cardassians are this, and like, so the Federation is the main thing that's good. Yeah. But then there are all these other groups that are like, we're not part of the Federation, we're actually kind of opposed. And sometimes Star Trek just treats them as plain villains, but a lot of times they treat it as like it's the real world. Like there's some things that the Klingons believe that you don't believe, but you want to have peace and you want to meet them halfway. How would you feel if Star Wars was just more politically complicated and there were like 4 factions and none of them were necessarily the bad guy, just different groups with different perspectives?
Yeah, we could have our Kirk moment. Let them die. I love Star Trek 6. Yeah, I'd be intrigued to that. Yeah, absolutely. Because from there could spring a lot of the action needed to drive a Star Wars story. I'm not quite suggesting that one of the planets be all about planets' rights versus Republic rights, but it could kind of come down to that kind of stuff, and asks some of those, dare I say, tougher questions that I think Star Wars asks in its own way. It always has. But I think what you and I are both talking about is just like, you and I sometimes will get into discussions with folks out in the real world when maybe 2 drinks are in us. And I will say Solo is a tremendously a deep political film. It is political. Sometimes I think it is direct, but it is overall this political story. But it's not as served up as Andor is, or even moments of the
Mhm.
Bad Batch, even some of the moments I think in Maul. So yeah, have a film series that isn't afraid to do that. Do it in a Star Wars way, but
Mhm.
yeah, I'm on board. I'm on board.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I would be really interested in that because I think it's still always going to be a story of characters,
Yeah.
and I can see something where it's somebody who is tempted by the dark side is the representative of. I mean, it's kind of the story of the separatists up to a point. Like
Yeah.
the Clone Wars animated show did a better job of diving deep into it, but I think it's
Hmm.
presented for you to
Hmm.
understand in the movie that like there are people with legitimate complaints and they want to walk away, but that has been weaponized by the dark side. So you could certainly have that kind of a story
Yeah.
where one of the factions is like, there's these people are good people. They just have slightly different
Hmm.
way they want to do things than the rest of the Republic, but they are being manipulated by a dark sider. Like there's plenty of
Yeah.
room for that kind of story.
Yeah, and I'd like in a weird way. I don't necessarily need to move past the red blades with the all black aesthetic, but I could kind of be convinced to just move past the Sith.
Hmm.
Consider them dead. Dark side is not just the Sith. It shows up in many other ways, and we have great examples, I think, in Star Wars. But to put it on a bigger scale,
Hmm.
to an audience that might be just waiting for the Darth Vader of this series, to
Hmm.
present it in a different way, but have it still be fueled by the dark side, be interesting.
Yeah, because people are born with a strong and deep connection to the Force all the time, and there's nothing to stop
Mm-hmm.
some space billionaire from going around the galaxy
Mm-hmm.
finding young Force sensitive kids and indoctrinating them and just using them as a
Mm-hmm.
tool of space
Yeah.
corporation.
Yeah.
In the yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I want to touch briefly on the Jedi in this new era. We're talking a lot about sort of official political setups, but I know there's a lot of desire, I think, from certainly all in fans who spend time thinking about it to say, how would Rey set up the Jedi differently? How should she? Um, do you want some of this sort of story of a maybe a better future to come through the Jedi?
Yeah. Yeah. And a I want to say a remolded kind of Jedi Order. I think you'd have to do that, but I know a lot of people go to some of the bigger social media kind of complaints. Jedi can date. Stop kidnapping kids. They never actually do, but those kind of things. But have a what do we lead with as Jedi? Or what is our core principles? What is our values? And we talked about the politicians who might be in the way of that, other characters, but other Force users, other Jedi. Is
Hmm.
there a faction that does Rey get tossed out as the lead Jedi? Is your
Mm.
way is not right, and someone else who maybe means well but is somewhat of a antagonist in the story uh, goes, we're going this way, and then that way gets them destroyed or gets people hurt
Hmm.
or and I know it sounds similar to some of the stuff maybe Poe is learning in Last Jedi and beyond, but to have that going on within a newly built and reformed Jedi Order could be interesting for me too.
Hmm. Yeah, I know. We talked about Lindelof's quotes about the film he worked on, and it sounded like
Uh-huh.
he mentioned the idea of a Jedi Reformation, but he was kind of
Right.
couching it in terms of like the film being allegorical to fandom debates about Star Wars of how
Mm-hmm.
detached to nostalgia versus new to be, and that kind of muddies the playing field for me to make it allegorical about
Mm-hmm.
the way we discuss Star Wars. Uh, but I think Ray wrestling with, I learned all these great things. I know how easy it is to let your anger get the better of you,
Mm-hmm.
and I know how much you have to be calm and precise and centered. But I also know how much community matters, and if she
Mm-hmm.
tries, like let's try different ways. If she came at it even of like I'm not sure what the right way is, maybe we
Mm-hmm.
do need to have more attachment. Maybe that is the right way. I think it'd be
Mm-hmm.
interesting to see that played with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And just there's a lot of ways to try to do the right thing that can
Hmm.
cause problems and drama
Yeah.
and
And
intrigue.
I would just love to see a status quo that starts with the Jedi are doing great. They're going on mercy missions and helping people get fed. And, when raiders try to steal, someone's cattle, you know, they come and protect people. Like somebody gets kidnapped, they go rescue them. Like just good things. Be great.
Yeah.
Last thing to chat about, Zach talks about Star Wars being an ancient myth that can have lots of value to us in the modern time, and connecting that to lots of real world stuff. For you, what is the value of ancient myths teaching us about modern moments?
I take it as it's universal, right? What the lessons to be found there are universal. I sometimes think there's really what they said. There's only 7 stories in the world. I think there's only like 5 lessons in the world. I really think we just all got to adapt them, and a lot of them around growth, change, empathy, compassion, protection, those kind of things. So yeah, it's that's what I take from it. It's universal, and so that I can, you know, I personally take comfort in, what people were dealing with 200 years ago that showed up in a story, or 1,000 years ago that showed up in a story, is still relevant today because it's the shared experience that we all have, and that gives me hope that we can find a way forward. That we can find the answers within ourselves and outside of ourselves too. That's what I take from timeless myths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think the timeless is the key part of that.
Yeah.
I think the all the machinery of the how and the why can change a lot, but I think it is something, in my opinion, fundamental about humans individually and humans trying to function together as a society, that these same issues are going to come up. I think we all have lots of potential in us to be kind and empathetic and connected and patient with one another, and we have it in us to be selfish and fearful and angry. And I think, the things that are portrayed as the dark side in Star Wars of greed and corruption and lashing out in anger and being convinced that anybody who talks to you about hope is just a liar who doesn't really mean that. They'd be selfish if they got a chance. I'm just being selfish better than them. They're fools. All those things will always be a challenge. And I think the better systems you have set up, the fewer injuries that will lead people to being tempted by those ideas, or by snake oil salespeople who sell those ideas. And I think there's something, I know it happens a lot with history. Like there's been so many times in the last 10 years where my wife will discover some podcast and be like, did you know there was a senator in Minnesota who was trying to get everybody to go pro-Nazi in the 40s? It was like, in those moments where you're like, we aren't alone. This battle against all these forces that add up to authoritarianism, greed and corruption and selfishness, they're always there, and they're always going to pop up. And it is our job to guard against them and be aware of the systems we live in today. And I think that is, to me, the value of like seeing the thread of the ongoing challenge.
Yeah. The fight goes on.
Yeah.
Somehow, insert name, it has returned.
And I think, to wrap it up, I think the simple answer to Zach's question is, I think, yeah, it's pretty cool. I would love it if the new trilogy was, hey, actually, we did it. We set up a real good society.
We did it.
Now there's some folks who don't want it. And that's the conflict.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah. All right. I think that is it, unless you have any other thoughts.
No, great question, Zach. Good stuff, and I appreciate what you do, Zach, with your job, and totally get what you mean by no, not that kind. So thank you for not being that kind. Yeah, but yeah, that's it. You, sir. Thanks for the question again, Zach. Any final thoughts on you, sir? Do you just want to? What do you want? What do you want in 9, 10, 11, 12?
We live in an interesting time where I think, this has been shared around. There's currently no Star Trek or Doctor Who in production. So
Yeah.
Maybe the fears of Star Wars dying out are not really a big risk, because we need one of them.
Yeah, we need one of them. Indeed. Well, thank you all for listening today. You can find us on social media, Force Center Pod. You can get merch at Fourth Wall. You still get merch at TeePublic. We are a podcast first in our hearts, and you can find our podcast wherever you get your podcast. Just search, you'll find us. On Sundays, we release audio only. Did I say we release?
We release.
Re-release. Databag Brawl. So check that out there. And you can support us directly at patreon.com/ForceCenter. Get into the Discord and continue the conversation. You can follow me at my website, KenNapzok.com, or Ken Napzok on social media. When I think to post things, I was just getting a rhythm of like, I'm gonna post a walk and talk every day. Nah, how about once a month? But you can follow me over there. And also, as I said up top, I'll be in San Diego for Comic-Con on Thursday, July 23rd. With a great lineup of comedians headlined by Jen Sturger and Mark Ellis. So if you're out there, come on by. Information's on my website. You, sir, we talked about the movie. The link down below for the tickets. But where else?
Yeah, you can follow me on all the social media. At Joseph Scrimshaw is my handle everywhere. And as I get ready to go out and promote in the film, as many followers as I can have on social media, the better, to make the film work. So I'm going to try to be on social media more often and doing more things. I'm already there quite a lot. I'll try to be there even more often. This Los Angeles premiere of Dead Media is just the beginning. To quote Count Dooku, we're doing a big road show through July and part of August. So much more information coming about what cities the film will be coming to. And I'm really looking forward to the possibility of meeting lots of Force Center friends that I haven't met before. So you can keep checking that website, antennareleasing.com/films/deadmedia.
There it is. All right. Links down below if you're watching. We'll see y'all next time here on Force Center.